Oh, good morning again. As I said earlier, I had an entirely different talk planned, and with the events of yesterday, uh, I decided to change my talk, and so here we go. Don't put your hands in hap chong, but I'm going to refer to chapter 20 in the Dhammapada. Some of you have taken the class with Reverend Bapang and probably went over thoroughly this chapter. It's called the path. In Pali, it's called Vagamaga, the verses on the path. And it's kind of a concise summary of why it is that we find ourselves here. So I'm going to explain it as we go along here and just read a little bit about it. Uh, First off, the path, Maga. What do you use a path for? I see pictures of Bullsong all the time in on Facebook. She's always walking some path somewhere through the woods or through a meadow or around a stream or whatnot. And it seems like she's always enjoying her surroundings. I have a particular trip I went on to Isle Royal years ago with a few people, and if you get lucky, you see moose. And one of our group was walking way ahead. He was concentrating on his steps and just trying to keep his mind concentrated on what was going on his particular walking path. While we were kind of enjoying the path as we went along. And lo and behold, he had walked completely past a big bull moose. It was about 20 feet off the path. And he didn't even see it. The three of us were just like, oh, is that cool? Let's grab some photographs of it. He was way ahead. He wanted to get from here to there. And certainly a path is something that's utilized to get from point A to point B. Of course, in Buddha Dharma, the path is talked about as getting from our blindness to where we can see clearly. Uh, it's as we walk along this path, gradually experiencing moral growth and hopefully character development, such that eventually we experience what's called liberation or moksha. Moksha means simply liberation from blind passions. Not liberation from all passion. Passion can get us along into good parts of our lives, but blind passions, those things that would detract us from living a clean, healthy life. So these verses are about the path. Verse 273, of paths, the eightfold path is the best. What is the eightfold path? First and foremost, right understanding or right viewpoint, having a right attitude towards everything. And that means having right thoughts, having right speech, having right action, trying to practice right livelihood, putting effort into everything that you're doing, and hopefully developing right mindfulness and right concentration or right meditation. That's the eightfold path that we're walking. Keep that vision in your mind. We're walking this eightfold path. Of truths, the Four Noble Ones are the best. What are the Four Noble Truths? The truth of suffering or disenchantment or dis-ease. Just not quite satisfied with things the way they are or should be. What's the root of suffering? The root is our desire, our attachment to things, our wanting things, holding on to them, or hating things, pushing them away, or just ignoring everyone else in favor of ourselves. Of mental states, Buddha said the human personality consists of five components: body, talked about it this morning in the Heart Sutra. Or form, feelings, thoughts, impulses. Impulses are also known as our mental states. And finally, consciousness or awareness. Of all the mental states, detachment is the best. Not holding on to things. Difficult to do. We talk about letting go, but when it comes right down to it, it's difficult to let go. We're so habituated to behaving and acting in certain ways, following certain patterns. But worth the challenge if we're willing to commit ourselves. Of human beings, the illumined one is the best. Of human beings, remember in Buddhism, there's 6 categories of beings. The 2 we know about are humans and animals. And then it's also suspected that there's the world of the gods and goddesses. There's the worlds of the hungry ghosts, the worlds of the hell beings, and the worlds of the Asuras, or the fighting titans. So this is the path. There is no other that leads to the purification of your mind. Follow this path and conquer Mara. What does it say in another chapter? And I forget which one. I believe it might be chapter 14 of the Dhammapada. Avoid evil, do good, cultivate the mind. That's the sum total right there of practicing the Dharma. Another thing I want to say, the Buddha was a very practical human being. He was a man. He wasn't a god. He didn't develop a philosophy. He didn't have an ideology. Everything that he spoke about and tried to teach was based on his experiences. Buddhism is experiential. Now, there are a lot of people who love to read books and talk about philosophy and talk about theories of Buddhism, and you can go online, and I have a lot of Dharma friends who are really deeply into it. And it really doesn't give a damn. It doesn't matter. You've got to practice this. This is a path to walk, to practice in your daily life. If you're serious about being a Buddhist, you start walking from here to there. You don't talk about it. You don't think about it. You do it. Follow this path and conquer Mara. This path will lead to the end of suffering. This is the path I, the Buddha, made known after the arrows of sorrow fell away from me. All the effort must be made by you. Very important. You have to invest yourself in this. If you don't invest yourself in doing the practice, you're not going to get from here to there. Buddhas only show you the way. Teachers only show you the way. We can't save you. Everyone can only save themselves. Hopefully, we teachers can at least outline the way that we found to be workable. Follow this path and practice meditation. Go beyond the power of Mara. Now, here's 3 important verses right here that are the basis of the 3 marks of existence. Verse 277, all created things are transitory. In other words, they're impermanent. Those who realize this are freed from suffering. This is the path that leads to pure wisdom. Verse 278, all created beings are involved in sorrow. Those who realize this are freed from suffering. This is the path that leads to pure wisdom. And verse 279, all states are without self. This who realize this are freed from suffering. This is the path that leads to pure wisdom. And then he said, now is the time to wake up, when you're young and strong. See, being as old as I am, I'm the oldest one here. If I were just starting out now, I'd be in deep trouble. But I've been doing this for a while now. So hopefully I'm a ways along the path here. But we always think that we've got tomorrow. We've always got tomorrow. Put it off today. There is a practice in Korean Buddhism, and I forget the name of it exactly, but monks usually recite it very often. And it's about how important this day is, right here, right now. Don't put off until tomorrow. We might not be here tomorrow. Just like Trump almost got assassinated yesterday. We might not be here tomorrow. Not by our own doing, but by others' doings. So now's the time to wake up when you're young and strong. Those who wait and waver, who have a weak will and a divided mind, will never find the way to pure wisdom. Guard your thoughts, guard your words, guard your deeds. These three disciplines will speed you along the path to pure wisdom. Meditation. What is it? Meditation that brings wisdom. Lack of meditation brings ignorance. Know well what leads you forward and what holds you back, and choose the path that leads to your wisdom. Cut down the whole forest of selfish desires, not just one tree only. Cut down the whole forest, and you'll be on your way to liberation. If there is any trace of lust in your mind, and the word is specific for lust, not desire, but is specific for attraction, fatal attraction, if you will, between man and woman. And I say man and woman because this is what they talked about. They didn't talk about homosexual relationships back in Buddha's time. If there's any trace of lust in your mind, you are bound to life like a suckling calf to its mother. Now that's some pretty good imagery right there. We know how the suckling calf has to hold on to that nipple there and get milk. Pull out every selfish desire as you would an autumn lotus with your hand. Follow the path to nirvana. I want to just talk about a couple of other things in relation to following and walking the path in terms of the precepts. And there are a number of you here who have taken refuge and taken the precepts, some who will. Especially in light of yesterday, the violence. Buddhism is not a pacifistic religion. The Buddha never preached pacifism. He preached nonviolence, realizing that the human mind is geared towards violence in certain situations based on our anger and our hatred, the cause of our suffering. Now, one of the things a lot of people I think are mistaken for, and they anachronistically want to make the Buddha into a pacifist, is that he grew up with being friends of kings, friends of men who had to rule, who had to make difficult decisions, who sometimes had to put men to death because of their crimes against society. He understood this. He knew this was necessary. Did he like it? No, but he knew it was necessary. He was practical in his decision making. And I've often wondered, somebody breaks into your house, what are you going to do? Are you going to, put your hands in hap chong and say, "Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome"? Probably not. I know I wouldn't. I'd grab the nearest piece of wood or something I've got and try and conk them over the head. I would try to hurt them. Not out of hate, but out of trying to save my own life. And the Buddha understood that. If you're trying to save your life or a friend's life or a loved one's life, and you go into it with right intention, the intention to save your life or someone else's, there's some karmic result from it, but minimal. Now, if you hate that person, and for instance, this shooter who was shooting yesterday, I don't know what his intention was. I don't think anyone does yet. But if he did it out of hate, his fruit of his karma is not very good. If he had some other intention, which he probably didn't, then the karma is not as bad. Of course, he's dead, so what does it matter either way? But I believe that our energy, our imprint goes on, so it's important. So the Buddha did not preach pacifism. He preached nonviolence, understandable nonviolence depending on the conditions. The Buddha did not preach absolute vegetarianism or veganism. Nowadays, there are all kinds of folks who want to say, "Oh, the Buddha was a vegetarian. He preached vegetarianism. He preached veganism." Hell no, he didn't preach that. Based on the precept number 1, not to kill, he said it's a better idea if you eat vegetables rather than meat. And he preached not to kill the meat yourself. But if someone offered you meat, remember, monks went around begging for their food. They didn't make their food. They didn't have stoves that they cooked it over or fire they cooked it over. They went begging into town every day. They ate 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 meals a day, depending on the tradition. It was only later when Buddhism moved into China and became what we call Mahayana Buddhism that people started growing their own crops, and vegetarianism became more popular. In a particular sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, Jivaka Sutta, and I think it's 50, 51, 52, or 53, I forget which. But Dr. Jivaka took care of the monk Sangha. He was their medical doctor. Went to school up in what's now Pakistan to a noted university. And the Buddha said, listen, if you have to give the sick monk meat, give it to him. It's fine. We want them to get well. If you have to give the sick monk alcohol to mix the herbs in, that's fine. Give it to him. He wasn't anti-alcohol. He wasn't anti-sex. Now, those of you who have taken the precepts, generally speaking, it's thought the precept number 3, the precept to try and guard ourselves against sexual misconduct, and precept number 5, the precept to guard ourselves against alcohol or drug intoxication, are 2 of the most popular or most important ones for modern society. Why? Because of the prevalence of alcohol and drugs around here. I've got to tell you, years ago, I knew I was an alcoholic. I went to a party of fraternity brothers up in Grand Blanc. I don't ever remember driving home, but I found myself in bed the next morning with my wife. I blacked out. I was developing blackouts. And I knew I was in trouble. And I went down to Hilton Road, and I went to the AA center there. And I said, hey, what do I do? And they said, well, if you think you're an alcoholic, maybe you better go to one of these meetings. And they gave me a book. And I was like, screw that. I don't want to go to a meeting. I'm just going to quit. I don't want to talk to anyone about my issues. I know what I've got. I know my problem. And I quit alcohol for 9 years. I wouldn't take anything that had alcohol in it, be it any type of medicine, be it communion wine. I wouldn't touch alcohol. And for 9 years, I was a dry drunk. And then I wasn't anymore. I went to a church function and had alcohol and took off on a 5-year bender after that. Fortunately, in 13 days, I'll be 24 years sober. It hasn't been easy, but it's a path that I've been able to maintain by keeping my effort in it, by keeping my mindfulness in it, by understanding that when I used to drink with my first wife at our church parties, we were both big in church activities. She was a deacon, I was an elder. We were Sunday school teachers, head of the senior high youth group. We were into it because I wanted to go into ordained ministry. And we went to a lot of church parties and we drank. And I would lose my inhibitions. And once I started losing my inhibitions, my mind started wandering. And all of a sudden, that 3rd precept started, wow, and I knew about the precepts back then. And it's like, wow, sexual misconduct. I mean, this would be really easy right now. My mind is going there, And fortunately, it didn't happen. But when all of a sudden you don't have control of your mind because of alcohol or drugs, it's real easy to step out of your realm of morality. And that scared me. That scared me a lot. Also, the Buddha was not anti-sex. He said the problem with sex is it's such a strong passion. It's at the root of procreation. It's at the root of maintaining a human society. There's nothing wrong with sexual relations if they're mutually dependent upon one another. if it's not a power issue right there, there's nothing wrong with that. However, he did say, if you want to be one of my monks, it's probably not a good idea that you have sexual relations because it destroys your mind. And pretty soon, all you can do is focus on sex. And he said that's just going to keep you from moving along the path. So this is the path. This is what we have chosen to walk. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But is it beneficial? Is it helpful? Yes, if you walk it. Don't just read about it for those of you who are listening out there. Don't just study it, but walk it. Try to get from here, suffering, to there, liberation, moksha. Finally, if you would open your chant books to page 15, I think this is kind of appropriate today just because of what happened yesterday and the attempt on Donald Trump's life. The Buddha's golden chain of love to help us all understand that we're part of this thing that's bigger than just me. So together, if we would read, I am a link in Buddha's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I must keep my link bright and strong. I will try to be kind and gentle to all living things and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends not only my own happiness, but also that of others. May every link in Buddha's golden chain of love become bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Svaha. Thank you.